Salutations! I'm entering new territory with today's video, the realm of tier lists. I've been wanting to do a tier list video for a while now, ever since the format took off on YouTube, and I think it's fitting for my first tier list to correlate with the first Halo title, Combat Evolved. As I've said many times, CE is my personal favorite Halo game, and a significant reason is the weapon sandbox, which we'll be ranking today. We'll actually be ranking these weapons twice, one for campaign and one for multiplayer. Each mode of play will have different ranking criteria since the context within each is extremely different, with some weapons even using different stats and features between the two modes. Of course, both lists will be looking for what can kill good, for example, but there's other factors to consider. For the campaign list, we'll be judging how each weapon performs on a solo legendary run with no skulls enabled, while playing as efficiently as possible. This will show the true mettle of the weapon sandbox when enemies have 40% more health and shields than they do on normal. Ammo availability will also play a significant role. Unlike in multiplayer, weapons do not respawn from their placed locations. If you find a reloadable weapon on the ground, the amount of ammo it has is all you'll get until you find more. Another important aspect is versatility, or how well the weapon does against the campaign's cast of enemies. Halo 1 has 3 enemy factions. First is the Covenant, which consists of grunts, jackals, elites, and hunters. They also have 3 vehicle types, including ghosts, banshees, and wraiths. However, Halo 1 doesn't feature that many vehicle encounters, and the ones that are present are either skippable or have vehicles you could use. I'd say how a weapon fares against banshees is the most important, since you fight more of those than you do ghosts and wraiths. In short, while I will be factoring them in, the vehicle matchup won't be as big of a deal compared to infantry. Next is the Flood, featuring infection forms, combat forms, and carrier forms. Lastly, there's the Sentinels, which only feature the aggressor class in this game, and while they're much less common than the other 2 factions, they are still significant roadblocks whenever they appear. Not counting the 3-weapon glitch on Pillar of Autumn, any player character can only hold 2 weapons at a time, and I personally like to spend more time with weapons that are viable against a larger number of enemy types than those that are more specialized. Melee attacks are a part of the game's golden triangle, and CE's melee system is the most unique in the franchise. Not only do weapons have different melee recovery times, but some weapons have longer melee ranges than others. Both of these seemingly minuscule traits can matter when you least expect them to, especially against elites. You'll notice that for my campaign tier list, besides the unusable tier, I don't have a single rank below C, because spoiler alert, I don't think there's a single weapon in the game that's terrible. You can get away with using any of these, it's just that some are much more versatile than others. As for the multiplayer tier list, I'm not even going to hide it, you know what's coming. Other than that, multiplayer has some of its own quirks that'll be factored in the rankings. Availability is going to mean something much different here. In Halo 1's generic weapon starts, players spawn with 2 weapons, the assault rifle and the pistol. I'll talk more about how this will affect their viability later on, but being starting weapons matters a heck of a lot for these 2. The other weapons in the sandbox are map pickups, each with a different spawn timer. Map pickups in CE adhere to the game's clock, regardless of whether or not someone picked them up. If something has a spawn timer of 30 seconds and you picked it up at 29 seconds, another copy of that pickup will spawn 1 second later. While we're judging the campaign weapons on how they match up against a wide variety of enemies, in multiplayer, only enemy Spartans are your concern, with the occasional vehicle if you're playing BTB. Halo 1 also features a mechanic not present in the campaign, Quick Camo. Quick Camo is the act of shooting a weapon while a player has camo to speed up the cloaking process. Weapons in CE have different cloaking rates, and the weapons with the faster cloak rates are sought after when going for camo. While melee attacks are important for campaign, they're arguably more so for multiplayer thanks to the double melee glitch. While you can perform these in campaign, it's not as viable of a strategy because it can eat up a valuable grenade, and if you die from the explosion, you revert to your last checkpoint. Multiplayer double melees are much better to go for since they can instantly kill a player after some shield chip, and because of the different melee ranges and speeds, some weapons are better at doing this than others. When we do get to ranking the weapons, they will be ordered within the tiers, so I'll have something low in A, high in B, etc. With all of that out of the way, let's start with tiering the campaign weapons. For this list specifically, I have them displayed in the order you find them in the campaign, and the first weapon you get is the infamous M6D pistol, which will be placed at the bottom of S tier. It's no secret that this weapon is amazing. It's one of 2 precision weapons in the game, meaning you can immediately kill an unshielded enemy if you get a headshot. This hilariously includes the hunter's skin region, so 1 bullet there is all it takes to bring them down. The pistol can carry 12 rounds per magazine, with 120 in reserve, and each shot deals 25 damage regardless of range. Considering the headshot kill ability, 132 total rounds is actually a lot of ammo if you just use the pistol on targets with either weakened shields or no shields at all. It's also pretty good into Banshees. These vehicles have 140 health on Legendary, but only take 25% of the pistol's 25 damage per shot. This requires 23 shots total to kill them, but landing shots on them is very easy thanks to their predictable movements and your high velocity projectiles. Speaking of velocity, the pistol rounds travel at 300 world units per second, and have a maximum travel distance of 40 world units. This means the range of the pistol is less than most people think it is, and on larger maps like Halo and Assault in the Control Room, you'll need to close the distance a bit to hit targets from very far away. An advantage of the pistol compared to most weapons is how it can take on enemies outside of their firing ranges. Most enemies have a world unit limit of around 11 to 14 when it comes to shooting at targets, and they don't engage any further. The pistol, with its ranged capabilities, can easily land shots further than 14 world units, making players safe from incoming fire. The trade-off is shots become harder to land as more leading becomes required. I'd argue that the pistol gets even better in the second half of the game when the Flood are introduced. This weapon's projectiles deal 50% bonus damage to combat and carrier forms, making it an excellent ranged choice against them. With all of these positives laid out, why only the bottom of S? It seems like the best weapon in the game. Well, a big limiting factor is ammo conservation. To be fair, pistol ammo isn't all that scarce. It won't take a long time before a player runs into an ammo cache with some extra magazines. The issue is that you really need to be a good shot to make the most of this weapon's available ammo, and the weapon's matchup against the elites only further proves this. The pistol does 80% of its max damage to an elite's shields, with the elite major being the most common of the higher ranked elites. If you're just using the pistol, you're using up nearly your entire magazine on one enemy if you have 100% accuracy. That's not an easy thing to achieve against an enemy that sidesteps as well as Halo 1 elites do. Even if you miss only once, you can get the kill on the major, but you're now stuck reloading your weapon, and that could put you on the back foot. Jackals are also not that easy to get efficient kills on. You can get a one-shot headshot, or a two-shot by shooting their hand and then their head, but it requires very good aim to achieve both. There's a reason why the optimal loadout in the game is the pistol and a plasma weapon of some kind. The pistol needs the plasma weapons to strip shields before it can get a kill that uses up less ammo. I mentioned the Banshee matchup earlier, but I wouldn't recommend dumping nearly 2 whole magazines into them if you're running low on ammo. Best to use another weapon and keep your pistol ammo for smaller targets. The pistol also does horribly into sentinels, only dishing out 20% of its damage into their armor per shot. As for its melee attack, it's objectively the worst melee attack in the game. It has the least amount of range, and it's slow. If you're going for melee attacks on enemies that see you, don't use this thing. It's bad. It's just a shame that the animation is amazing. So overall, I'm going with the bottom of S. I was thinking about being harsher and placing it at the top of A, but the fact you can easily shoot at targets from far away to the point where they can't hurt you back is an amazing trait. It also can't be overlooked how well this weapon does during the second half of the game. Its ammo availability becomes much greater when combat forms start using it, and the weapon itself just dominates the Flood. However, it's not the best weapon in the game, and it has distinct weaknesses that require support from other weapons. The assault rifle is up next, and I'll be placing it at the bottom of A. I think the assault rifle is one of the most criminally underrated weapons in the entire franchise. Its DPS is massive. Each bullet does 10 damage, and its fire rate of 15 rounds per second means it has the potential to dish out 150 points of damage per second. It can carry 60 rounds per magazine, along with 600 more in reserve, totaling 11 magazines to unload onto your enemies. Ammo for this weapon is much more common than the pistol, as not only are they available at pretty much every human weapon cache, but almost every marine in the game carries this weapon. Once they die, their ammo is available to you. All of this, combined with its wide firing spread, makes the assault rifle an amazing suppressive weapon, especially against a whole squad of grunts. These are good traits to have, and should be utilized when trying to conserve pistol ammo. While the assault rifle's Jackal matchup is not the best, it's compensated by its superb melee attack. While the pistol has the worst melee in the game, the assault rifle's is by far the best. Its range is the second longest in the game behind the rocket launchers, and it's among the fastest in the game. Up close, the elite matchup isn't even that bad either. While there's a 70% damage penalty to their shields, the sheer volume of fire means you can still melt through their shields relatively quickly. Its bullets still only do 25% damage to vehicle armor, but when banshees swoop in against a player, the assault rifle can strip away its health much faster than the pistol can thanks to its fast fire rate. During flood missions, the assault rifle is the most efficient option against larger swarms of infection forms. While they're not the most threatening flood form in the game, managing these swarms on Legendary is still an important strategy. They're not that bad into Sentinels either, as long as you close the distance to them. Assault rifle rounds do full damage against them, unlike the pistol. While there's plenty of nice things to say about the assault rifle, there's reasons why I have it at the bottom of A tier and not any higher. The biggest limiting factor to the AR is its effective range. Its full auto firing spread makes it inaccurate against faraway targets. You could fire it in short bursts to compensate for this, but your DPS will be significantly lower. It's better to use this strategy when backpack reloading your precision weapon to keep the momentum up. Otherwise, just use one of the precision weapons for long distance shooting. The assault rifle is not worthless into hunters by any means, but when you're stacked against the precision weapons that can one-shot them, it's not even close. In fact, AR bullets only do half damage to hunter's skin, and no damage to their armor. Thankfully, melee attacks, which do 40 to 60 points of damage, do full damage against any part of a hunter, so it's ideal to melee them when they're facing you, which saves 8 to 12 bullets. Regardless, it's an inefficient weapon to use against hunters. Jackals from far away are a no-go for the AR, even if you're burst firing. You're pretty much never going to deal enough damage to make them stagger, so the only option is to get up close and smack them repeatedly. The assault rifle also has a pretty bad matchup into combat forms. Its bullets have a damage nerf against flood flesh, only doing 65% of its damage to them. The aforementioned good matchup into large infection swarms is neat, but it's still hard to justify keeping this weapon over the pistol or shotgun when these two are buffed against combat and carrier forms. The melee attack, which is one of the assault rifle's defining traits, is worthless into flood, only dishing out 20% of its max damage, so no good at all. With all that said, bottom of A tier for the assault rifle. The plasma pistol. Oh boy, you're looking at one of the best weapons in the game. S+, no contest. It's easily the most common weapon in the campaign. If you run into Covenant, you're finding a plasma pistol. In fact, Jackals only ever use plasma pistols in this game. You can't walk 5 feet without stepping over one of these. You may as well have infinite ammo turned on. The plasma pistol's battery power is incredible. It takes 5 standard bolts to drain 1% of its battery, so if you're just using the standard fire most of the time, you're getting 500 total shots. The overcharge shot only takes 11% of the battery in this game, giving you 10 overcharges to work with. Being so common and energy efficient isn't enough, because its DPS is also insane. Each plasma bolt does varying levels of damage depending on the range. The kicker is you can fire this weapon as fast as you can pull the trigger, so you can have this weapon firing like a machine gun. The overcharge shot is also really powerful, with each bolt doing 70 points of EMP damage. The EMP effect in Halo 1 ensures that any and all energy shields are depleted by a projectile using it, so Jackal shields and Elite Zealot shields are not safe from this thing. There's a misconception that plasma projectiles in this game are worse versus flesh than bullets are, but that's not true at all. They still do full health damage to most targets. These are the stats against grunts and against the jackals. The jackal matchup is notable thanks to the plasma pistol's perfect accuracy. It's very easy to have most of your shots hit their hand, causing a stagger. Plasma pistol bolts are twice as effective against elite shields. With this in mind, here's the stats against all of the elites. The projectiles are neutrally effective versus combat forms. This makes it a solid partner for the shotgun during the last 3 levels of the game, where you have to square off versus Covenant, Flood, and Sentinels. Speaking of Sentinels, the plasma pistol is the best option in the game against them. Just like with elite shields, the standard bolts are twice as effective against their armor, and overcharged bolts straight up one-shot them. The plasma pistol also has a fast melee attack. It doesn't have the range of the assault rifles, but it's still marginally further than the magnums. While the plasma pistol is top tier, it still has a few downsides. It's not the best thing to use against hunters, since they're the one character in the campaign where plasma pistol bolts have a nerfed damage multiplier against, which is half damage just like the assault rifle. It's not great into vehicles with its slow projectiles. The biggest issue this weapon has is how inconsistent the tracking is for the overcharged shots. Shots that should be landing could just get whiffed, and plenty of Halo 1 speedruns have died due to this inconsistency. Despite these shortcomings, they're heavily outweighed by its positive traits, and S+ is absolutely warranted. The plasma pistol's sibling, the plasma rifle, is up next. Statistically, it's worse than the plasma pistol in almost every way. It does less damage per shot, it expends more battery life per shot, and it lacks the overcharge bolts that define the plasma pistol. The fire rate is also much slower. While you can fire the plasma pistol as fast as you can pull the trigger, the plasma rifle has a build-up fire rate that starts at 7 rounds per second, then maxes out to 10 rounds per second. As the battery of this weapon ages, the fire rate also gets slower. The amount of heat generated per shot also goes higher, and cooldowns start to become longer. All of this combined means you'll want to keep finding more plasma rifles to use the weapon at its strongest. It's not as common as the plasma pistol, being exclusively used by elites until the Flood missions, but since almost every Covenant squad has elites, it's not that big of an issue. You just can't walk 5 steps and find another plasma rifle just like the plasma pistol. It also has one of the worst melee attacks in the game. It has the same range as the plasma pistols, but it's way slower. It sounds like I'm being too harsh on the plasma rifle, but I'm putting it at the top of A tier for a reason. While it's a lesser plasma pistol, it's still a great weapon in its own right. The plasma rifle does have a few advantages over the plasma pistol. Its projectiles are noticeably faster, letting it deal with faraway targets much better. Its fully automatic nature actually makes the plasma rifle much easier to use than the plasma pistol. It's very likely that your trigger finger will end up feeling strained after using the plasma pistol, so the plasma rifle is a viable alternative while you're recovering your hand. Pretty much all of the matchups the plasma rifle has mirror those of the plasma pistols, minus the overcharged shots. It might be weaker per shot than the plasma pistol, but it's still pretty strong. This lets it play the role of a heavier version of the assault rifle, being much more accurate at a distance while hitting harder, especially against elite shields. Overall, the Halo 1 plasma rifle is my favorite in the series for a reason, and the top of A tier reflects this viewpoint. We now enter the grenades, starting with the plasma grenade. This is without a doubt the best plasma grenade in the series, and it's going to the top of S rank. This thing is a squad wiper. It dishes out an incredible amount of damage per explosion, ranging from 80 to 120 damage with a blast radius of 2 world units. It has the EMP effect that the plasma pistol overcharge shot has, meaning every shield in the game is neutralized by its explosion. The plasma grenade has its iconic sticky feature, and any target that gets stuck is damaged further when it explodes, applying another 120 damage to the stuck target on top of the original. Enemies that are stuck will panic and run around in circles, and this will often result in them running into their teammates, causing the whole squad to die. It's much easier to achieve sticks in the campaign than in multiplayer, since targets are wider and they aren't as mobile as other players. You only get to carry 4 plasma grenades at a time, but they're common drops, since every Covenant unit in the game except the Hunters is likely to drop at least one. The Plasma Grenade is great into vehicles as well. Sentinels like to bunch up, so sticking one is a good way to kill the whole squad. Plasma Grenade explosions are also quadruply effective versus Sentinels. The Plasma Grenade does have a few drawbacks. I wouldn't advise sticking Flood combat forms. They're likely to charge the player regardless if they were stuck. Even stuck Covenant targets can be dangerous in claustrophobic areas, so make sure you have enough space to leave the blast radius. Missing a Plasma Grenade can be unfortunate because of its long detonation timer. You can compensate for this by shooting nearby targets and forcing a stun, keeping them in the blast radius. Sticking Hunters will not result in a kill and will take a few to bring one down. Their skin only takes half damage from Plasma Grenade explosions, and their armor reduces it further to a quarter damage. It's extremely difficult to stick a Jackal, but it can be done if you're super accurate. I wouldn't advise sticking a Grunt that's by itself, only if it's around other enemies. The best targets to go for are definitely the elites. Regardless, the Plasma Grenade is a monster and is deserving of S tier. The Frag Grenades are also deserving of S, but will go right behind their Plasma counterparts. Frags can be just as squad wiping as Plasma Grenades at times. They do the same amount of explosive damage, but they have a slightly larger blast radius of 2.5 world units. You can't stick targets with these, but they have a much shorter arm time of half a second once it lands on the ground. These grenades are particularly busted against the Flood, capable of destroying entire squads of them. Plasmas can do the same, but the shorter arm time of the frags and the larger blast radius makes them much better options for this purpose. Frag grenades are great for quickly taking out large groups of grunts and especially jackals, but elites are more resilient to frags than they are to plasmas. That being said, elites still try to dodge frags whenever possible, so throwing one at an elite is a good way to throw off its attack pattern or force it out of cover. These grenades are even worse against hunters than plasmas are, and I highly advise not to use it on them. Forget about using them versus sentinels as well. Not only can they just fly over them, but even if they do get hit, they resist frag grenades, only taking 40% damage. I'd say frags get significantly better after the Flood are introduced. During the first half of the game, frag grenades are scarce, only being found at ammo caches or fallen marine allies. When the Flood show up, frags are way more numerous, as combat forms can drop them when they die. While frags can't squad wipe as good as plasmas, they could still do it extremely well, especially on Flood missions, and that deserves S tier right behind plasma grenades. Found on the game's second mission, we have the Needler. It's going to C rank. The Needler is not a bad weapon by any means, it's just not as efficient as the campaign's other options. Its Achilles heel is its low speed. It has a built-up fire rate that starts at 3 rounds per second, then speeds up to 10 after holding the trigger for half a second. It has the slowest projectiles in the game, traveling in the air at 4 world units per second. When the needles do make contact, they don't detonate immediately. They sit for 3/4 of a second, then explode, dishing out 10 points of damage. If you manage to land 7 needles, you trigger its iconic Super Combined detonation, dealing 60 damage of EMP with a small blast radius of 1 world unit. Just like with the normal needle detonations, it takes 3/4 of a second to trigger a Super Combine, but grunts, jackals, and elites will panic if 7 or more needles make contact. All of this combined makes killing enemies with the Needler an incredibly slow process, giving enemies plenty of time to return fire. In the time it takes to land shots on an enemy with the Needler, you could have killed 1 or more targets with the other weapons in the game. If your Super Combined detonation triggers next to grenades that fell from enemies, they'll cause a chain reaction that is equally as dangerous to you as it is to the enemy. Hunters take half damage from Super Combined explosions, meaning on Legendary, you likely eat through almost all of your ammo just trying to kill one. Speaking of ammo, you don't get to carry a lot of it. Each magazine holds 20 needles with 80 spare. Needlers are also harder to find compared to plasma pistols. For every 3 grunts that hold a plasma pistol, you'll find 1 holding a Needler. You'll very occasionally see elites use them, while jackals will always hold plasma pistols and nothing else. So what good is this even for? Well, the Needler is an elite killing specialist. Its super combined explosions do EMP damage, so even Zealots fall to the pink death. The Needler is also surprisingly good versus Sentinels. Super combines have 4 times effectiveness versus Sentinel armor, so if you have a squad bunching up, you can kill more than one with just one super combine. The Needler is also not horrible versus Flood, with super combines doing double damage to them. Even the small needle detonations have a 20% damage buff to individual Flood forms, but that just means it does 12 damage as opposed to 10, so go for super combines. Despite all that, you're still better off using other weapons against the Flood. It takes too long to kill them, meaning you're vulnerable to your own super combines, and other weapons like the pistol and shotgun kill Flood way faster. While the Needler is my favorite weapon in the series, I can't deny that it's simply outclassed and not really good in Halo 1's campaign. Still, it's not entirely unusable. C tier. The sniper rifle is up next, and it's going in the middle of A tier. This is one of the easiest sniper rifles to use in the series. Fast rate of fire with 2 rounds per second, and it does incredible damage to elite shields. It's not even hard to use it at closer ranges thanks to its first zoom level only being 2 times. As a precision weapon, it will one-shot hunters when firing at their skin. It can also hold quite a lot of ammo considering its kill potential. 4 rounds per magazine with 24 spare means as long as you're an accurate shot, you can kill a lot of elites with this thing. On missions where the sniper rifle is present, a good number of ammo caches will contain sniper mags to pick up, most notably Halo, Assault on the Control Room, and especially Truth and Reconciliation. On this level, you start with 64 spare sniper rounds, and almost every ammo cache you find will have more sniper ammo available. This weapon does have some major downsides though, and is only A tier for a good reason. It's the weapon that arguably falls off the hardest when the second half of the game starts. The sniper rifle is absolutely useless against the Flood, with its projectiles only doing 5% of its max damage to combatant carriers, so basically nothing. It's not much better versus Sentinels, with 20% effectiveness versus their armor. While you can still use the sniper rifle against elites and hunters, you'll arguably want something more versatile. Even before the second half, the sniper is useless against vehicles, doing 0 damage to their armor. I still think the sniper rifle is an amazing weapon, but it has versatility issues that become exacerbated later in the game, and I feel middle of A tier is fair for it. Now this next weapons ranking is going to turn some heads, but hear me out. The rocket launcher is the sole B tier weapon on this list. Its biggest issue that will exacerbate its other problems is ammo conservation. You can load 2 rockets at a time and hold 8 in reserve, but finding more rockets could be a challenge. Cortana advertises it as an anti-hunter weapon on the Sonic Cartographer. However, it takes 2 rockets to kill a hunter on Legendary, while it takes only 1 pistol shot to do the same. If you're actively not using the pistol, then yes, the rocket's a great choice versus them, but if you are, why bother wasting rockets on hunters at all? In the same room you find the last pair of hunters on the level, there's an ammo cache worth more pistol ammo. I'd rather spend 2 pistol shots than 4 rockets. It's also seen as an anti-vehicle weapon. However, typically when there's a lot of enemy vehicles around, there's other vehicles that the player could be using to take them out instead, with 0 ammo expenditure. To be fair, there are 2 times on 2 betrayals where using a rocket versus a wraith is warranted. One at the beginning before you get your first Banshee, and one towards the end where you get your last Banshee. Although for that second encounter, there's a ghost you could use instead. Even still, using the rocket launcher versus a wraith is not that easy. It takes 4 rockets to kill 1 on Legendary. Thing is, you have to find a balance between being close enough to get your rockets to land, while being at a safe distance to dodge the wraith's mortars. And in a game where shooting your rocket launcher is a big investment, missing really sucks. So yes, the rocket launcher serves as the game's anti-vehicle weapon while you're not in a vehicle yourself, but not only do I think it's not a particularly good anti-vehicle weapon, it's almost unnecessary throughout the entire game outside of 2 betrayals' wraith encounters. In my opinion, when it comes to infantry combat, I think the rocket launcher is mostly outclassed by the grenades in this game. Grenades offer you explosive firepower without taking up a weapon slot. and are significantly more common than rocket ammo is. Plasma grenades are even better at squad wiping than the rocket launcher because of the EMP effect neutralizing elite shields. You can't even kill an elite major with a direct hit on Legendary with a rocket. If it wasn't bad enough, the Sentinels resist rocket fire, only taking 40% of the max damage from a single blast. So I spent all this time dunking on the rocket launcher, but it's not all doom and gloom. For me personally, I see the rocket launcher as a third grenade option in this game. One that is direct impact, giving you explosive results immediately rather than waiting on a countdown timer. This is particularly useful on flood missions, especially in encounters where there's a ton of combat forms bunching up. The issue is that on these missions, rocket ammo can be extremely scarce, so knowing when to fire a rocket is key. Rockets are devastating against large groups of grunts and jackals, and while I think using it on them is a waste, if you're near the end of a level and you have plenty of rockets to use, I'd say go for it. The rocket launcher is not a fire and forget weapon in Halo 1's campaign. Each shot has to be calculated in order to get the most out of it, and most of the time you carry a rocket launcher, you're stuck just using your other weapon because you're saving rockets for niche circumstances. B tier. The final weapon on this list is the shotgun. After a long time thinking about where to place this, I'd say it's the most important weapon in the game, and it goes to the number 1 slot in S+ tier. It's cracked in the campaign. The shotgun can load up to 12 shells with 60 in reserve. Since shotgun wielding combat forms are a relatively common sight, you'll rarely be low on ammo. It has a fast reload speed, a fast melee attack, and the range of its projectiles are the same as the Magnums, traveling up to 40 world units. What makes the shotgun such a devastating weapon is how well it matches up into everything in the game. Grunts and jackals? Food. Elite shields and hunter skin? Full damage. It's even really good into banshees that fly in close. However, there's one matchup that makes the Halo 1 shotgun iconic: the Flood. Pellets absolutely shred them, dealing 50% bonus damage to combat forms and 75% bonus damage to carriers. No other weapon in the game can match the level of dominance this weapon has over the Flood. On Legendary, every Flood form in the game is one-shotted up close, and even from far away, they can be two-shotted. I have to also mention the shotgun's unique way of reloading. Inserting a shell is very quick, and you don't have to wait for all 12 to be loaded. You can interrupt the reload at any time and get back into the action, and with how aggressive combat forms are, this advantage is crucial. I'd argue that the shotgun's presence during the second half of the game actually elevates the usefulness of the other weapons on this list. The shotgun is just so good at killing almost everything in the game that it doesn't really need support from other weapons most of the time. Want to experiment with a shotgun and needler combo? You'll honestly be fine, even on Legendary. The only subpar infantry matchup is against Sentinels, which have a 50% damage resistance to shotgun pellets. Even still, if you can close the distance, you'll at minimum two-shot them. There really is not much else to say. The shotgun is an absolute monster. It's sad to see how the shotgun got weaker in subsequent Halo titles. While it's still a good option in these games, it's no longer the world destroyer that the Halo 1 shotgun is. It's, in my opinion, the apex predator of this game, and is deserving of top of S+. And this is my final campaign list. Let me know how I did in the comments below, especially if you have any disagreements. Now let's move on to the multiplayer list. There are a couple of things I'd like to mention before I begin the rankings. For this list, I'll mainly be taking the MCC version into account as this is the most popular out of the three, with the others being the original Xbox version from Bungie and Halo PC/Custom Edition from Gearbox. If I was making this list a year ago, I'd have lumped MCC with the Gearbox version, but recent updates have changed things for CE's gameplay on MCC, so it's now in its own branch. Like I said, the final ranking will be based on the MCC version of the multiplayer, but I will note where a weapon would be ranked if I was talking about OG Xbox or Halo PC, because there are important things to consider that I'll mention later. With that said, let's start the rankings. For this one, I'm going to start from the bottom of the list and work my way up. Starting with, forgive me my love for what I'm about to do. The Needler is a map callout and nothing more. It's just awful. In the campaign, it can at least do something. The biggest counter to a multiplayer needler is moving to your left or right. Needles straight up never hit anything unless your target is either standing still or moving in a straight line. The sad thing is, the Gearbox version of the game actually buffed the needler specifically for multiplayer, and it's this version that MCC multiplayer uses. Do you think this fixed the weapon? No. Bottom of the totem pole. Next in D is the plasma pistol. While it's one of the two monarchs of the campaign, its domain does not extend to multiplayer. The plasma rifle played a reverse card, and now it's the one outclassing the plasma pistol. The plasma pistol standard bolts have a 60% debuff against both a Spartan's shields and health. Its overcharge ability completely neutralizes a player's shields, even if they got an overshield. The other feature exclusive to the multiplayer is plasma stun. When hit by a plasma-based weapon, the player's movement speed and look sensitivity are greatly reduced. The projectile velocity of the standard bolts is lower than the plasma rifles, relegating it to a close range only option, and the tracking for the overcharge is extremely inconsistent. There really isn't a good reason to pick up the plasma pistol over better options. D tier. Next up in C is the flamethrower. I actually think the flamethrower is pretty nice. It's capable of completely melting a point-blank ranged player in less than a second. The biggest issue with the weapon, however, is its range. It's only effective at point-blank range since its flame only travels at 3.6 world units per second. It's going to have a hard time against players any further away, and it's best used against people who don't see you. Given its hyper niche role, it's the sole C rank, but I still think it's a really cool slept-on weapon. Moving on to the B ranks, first we have the plasma grenade. Simply put, it's significantly harder to stick Spartan players than Covenant AI. You're better off using frag grenades against other players in multiplayer most of the time. That being said, it's not impossible to stick people, and if you stick an overshield player, they'll still die. It's pretty easy to stick enemy vehicles in BTB, and the pilot will either take major damage or just flat out die. The next weapon in B rank is the shotgun. The undisputed ruler of campaign is just okay in multiplayer. The shotgun pellets actually have a 50% damage nerf to Spartan shields, so using it against a shielded player at further ranges is not a good idea. Thankfully, it does full damage versus health, making the shotgun a great cleanup option against weakened players. And it's one of the quick camo weapons. It used to be a lot worse in Gearbox and older MCC updates when the hit detection was really bad, and even now it can still be inconsistent at times. Starting the A ranks, we have the fuel rod gun. It's one of my favorite weapons in the series. It's a battery-powered explosive weapon that generates heat each time it fires. This means that if you can practice good heat control, you'll rarely ever overheat with this weapon and you can consistently deal damage. Its widespread does mean that you won't be accurate most of the time, but the area of effect from each explosion does mitigate this issue. This weapon fires at 2.2 rounds per second, and thanks to the concussive force of each blast, it's a great tool to lock down a given pathway. The arc-firing nature of the fuel rod's projectiles lets it play like a handheld wraith, letting the user fire shots from a safe location to reach enemies behind buildings and other fortifications. All that being said, I still think it's usurped by the sheer power of the rocket launcher, but the fuel rod gun is a viable alternative that has tricks that the rocket cannot emulate. Next in A is the plasma rifle. This is one of the weapons in the game that functions very differently between campaign and multiplayer, firing at a wider spread value than its campaign counterpart. However, you'll be wrong to think this weapon is worse off. Everyone knows about its stunning capabilities, and with the MCC's most recent content update, this feature has reached a level of consistency that's nearly on par with OG Xbox. Beyond plasma stun, there are other awesome traits for this weapon. It's a tried and true shield stripper that can quickly eliminate an overshield. The plasma rifle also has a unique feature that it and only it has: multiplayer headshots. This is not the same as a precision weapon headshot that kills an unshielded player. A multiplayer headshot is a 50% damage buff to projectiles that hit an unshielded head. You can either kill a player in 9 headshots, or hit a couple of headshots, then go for a melee attack. The plasma rifle is also the fastest quick camo weapon in the game. Given the plasma rifle's excellent flanking abilities, This is one of the best weapons to use under the effects of active camo. There's reasons why this weapon is my favorite in the game. It's just so good. If this was a list for the Gearbox version of the game, I'd probably place it somewhere in B or even C, since it's much less consistent over there. The last A rank is the Assault Rifle. I always hear people say this weapon does no damage, and I don't think we're playing the same game because it absolutely shreds. It has the capability to kill a player in only 1 second if all of your shots land, with 15 shots needed for a kill. Because of this weapon's high damage model, it also makes for an excellent vehicle killer. Let's not forget about its melee attack, which, again, is the best in the game by far. The Assault Rifle has the fastest double melee in the game, along with a longer than normal melee range. It's the go-to weapon when going for double melees. The Assault Rifle is also a good quick camo weapon, but more importantly, it's a quick camo weapon that you get when you spawn. A very common tactic in multiplayer matches is to hold onto your Assault Rifle when going for camo in a power weapon like the rocket launcher or sniper rifle, because the pistol cannot quick camo. Camo is one of the most important map pickups in the game, with matches won by teams continuously controlling it, so making the most out of camo is an important key to victory, and that means holding on to your Assault Rifle. What prevents the Assault Rifle from moving into the S ranks is its poor matchup against ranged targets. Its wide firing spread lends it to be good up close, oftentimes beating pistol users in close range engagements. The same cannot be said for mid to long range fights, where the pistol and sniper rifle come out on top. The Assault Rifle provides so much utility off spawn, and that's why it's listed here at the top of A. It's a very important player in the CE sandbox. We now reach the S ranks, starting with the rocket launcher. This is one of the best rockets in the series, with tremendous splash damage and high one-hit kill potential. Like with active camo, games are centered around the control of this weapon. It's powerful enough to even one-shot overshield players, and no vehicle is safe to this thing. It's limited by its low ammo capacity and long respawn time of 2 minutes on almost all maps, with an exception on Derelict where it spawns every 30 seconds. Next are Frag Grenades in S tier. It's the best frag in the series hands down. Nuclear damage, high AoE, and its physics altering capabilities let it launch weapons to players and nudge power-ups off of their spawn points. In 2v2 matches, the standard format for Halo 1, each player gets a whopping 4 frag grenades off spawn. Grenade spam is very common, but the important thing to master is dealing with the fact frag grenades have to be resting on the ground before they explode. Properly positioning your grenade throws is a key skill. Frags also spawn very quickly on the map, every 30 seconds, and are almost always placed in 4s. Combine this with frags dropped by players, and you'll seldom be out of frags. You can also use frags to make certain jumps. A popular example is the overshield nade jump on Damnation. In short, frags in CE are high damage dealers that provide a ton of utility, and the fact you get 4 of them in 2v2s is huge. Number 3 in S tier. This upcoming ranking is where I feel many people will think I'm crazy, so just to remind you, this ranking is primarily for the Master Chief Collection version of this game. For MCC Halo 1, my number 2 in S tier is the Magnum. This isn't me saying the Magnum is better or worse than it is in the original Xbox or Gearbox versions of the game. I just think the number 1 slot has a much greater influence on MCC Halo 1, and I'll get to why I think that real soon. It's no secret that the Halo 1 pistol is an iconic but controversial weapon. It's the game's jack of all trades, like its descendants, the battle rifle and DMR. It's Halo 1's primary kill gun. Many players consider the Halo 1 pistol overpowered in multiplayer, but I disagree. Halo 1's multiplayer sandbox operates differently compared to later Halos. It centers around utility. The Assault Rifle offers you a CQB cleaner that can best the pistol up close, a quick camo option off spawn, and a fast melee attack. The shotgun is similar, but has a map pickup and is the strongest option for close quarters. The plasma weapons, primarily the plasma rifle, offer the fastest way to deal with overshield users while holding enemies in place with a stun, and are also quick camo options. The sniper rifle is the undisputed king of ranged combat, dealing with enemies at much further ranges than the pistol can reach, and the rocket launcher's unrivaled explosive power makes quick work of enemy players. However, both of the power weapons cannot quick camo. I've mentioned the importance of quick camo before, and I'll say it again. When using camo in a power weapon, you want to rid yourself of the pistol since it cannot utilize quick camo, preferring a weapon that can. The Halo 1 pistol actually allows more weapons to shine than you might think it does, while the jack-of-all-trades weapons in later Halos don't. As for the pistol itself, it's a weapon that's easy to get into, but hard to master. It requires more accuracy than precision weapons in later games, due to the red reticle prereq being much more strict. It has the capability to kill a player in 3 shots, which is powerful, but can be difficult to achieve against competent players who won't allow themselves to be 3-shotted. For ranged combat, the pistol requires leading due to the relatively slow nature of its bullets, which only travel at 300 world units per second. The pistol also has a limited range of 40 world units and cannot engage targets any further than that, which matters a great deal for BTB matches. All that being said, the pistol is still S tier for a reason. It's the best weapon for mid-range fights, which is the most common engagement in the game. It's also really good into vehicles. Players and hogs can be shot out of them, same with the Ghost and even the Scorpion, which has a see-through hatch in multiplayer. The pistol is also your best ranged option against Banshees, which can be team-shotted by pistols pretty quickly. But I think the most important reason is that it's also a starting weapon. It is arguably the most important weapon in the game to master. As I said earlier, the pistol serves as the game's jack-of-all-trades and is the primary weapon to get kills with. It's just a matter of fact that most fights will come down to pistol versus pistol. We can agree to disagree on whether you feel the pistol is overpowered or not. I personally don't think so, but its S-tier placement is more than justified. So now let me tell you why the sniper rifle is the real demon of MCC Halo 1. Like I said before, it's one of the easiest sniper rifles to use in the series. The recoil it shows in the firing animation is a farce. There is zero recoil or screen shake for this weapon when it's fired, unlike its descendants in later titles. Its fast fire rate of 2 rounds per second lets you quickly kill enemies with body shots. Unlike the pistol's measly 40 world unit range, the sniper rifle's max range is 1000 world units, effectively meaning it has infinite range on Halo 1 standard maps. While it's primarily used for extremely long-range fights, it has a 2x zoom mode, letting it be effective at closer ranges too. The sniper rifle is the undisputed king of BTB, and it performs very well on other maps that feature it. Its matchup against most of the vehicles is insane as well. Like the pistol, it can shoot players out of Hogs, Ghosts, and Scorpions. Only this time, it could be a one-shot headshot. If you're using camo alongside a quick camo weapon, it's over for your enemies. You're bordering on invincible. Now, you'd be saying, well, it's a power weapon, of course it's supposed to be powerful. And normally, you're right. However, there's something about the sniper rifle in Halo 1 that completely breaks it on a majority of the game's maps. Its respawn timer. On most of the game's maps, it respawns every 30 seconds. It might as well be a starting weapon with how common this thing is. If you hang around a sniper spawn, you'll never run out of ammo. This is what allows the sniper rifle to be a monarch on many of the maps it's featured in. It's a ludicrously powerful and defining force in the game that has no business spawning every 30 seconds on almost all the maps that it's in. However, if this tier list was for the OG Xbox version, it'd be a different story, and I'd have it somewhere in A tier or maybe even B tier. It's significantly harder but not impossible to use off host due to the input latency, and that's why I feel the sniper rifle is number 1 on MCC Halo 1. But if you feel the pistol should be number 1 because it's on all maps unlike the sniper, that's a fair assessment. And with that, that'll conclude this much longer than I thought it would be video. Let me know if you want to see more of these tier lists. They might have to be 2-parters though, because there's way more weapons than there are in Halo 1. If, and only if, you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, leave a comment on your opinions or even your own tier lists, subscribe for more Halo content from this channel, and hit the bell to never miss an upload. I like to give a shout out to my counselor tier patrons, as well as my Needler gang members right here on YouTube. This is the Vengeful Vadim. Always remember that you matter more than you think you do, and I'll see you on the great journey.